I'm sure we all know Ben Johns by now, but his brother Collin Johns and pro player Anna Bright have their own signature paddle shape that's sure to turn some heads. Hey everybody, it's Luca from Rackets and Runners. Some of you who follow the channel a little bit more regularly know that I was dealing with an ankle injury the past couple of weeks, but I'm finally back on court. Before I took some time off, I reviewed Ben Johns' 16mm Perseus paddle. Go check out that review, by the way. But it's a fantastic paddle that colors somewhere between the lines of a true thermoform spin beast and more traditional softer paddles. Obviously, with such a lofty $340 price point, it was always going to be polarizing, and because it hasn't totally broken pickleball, there are some people that aren't too happy with Joola about it, but that doesn't change the fact that it's still a fantastic paddle. Well, if you thought we were going to take a look at some better value paddles today, think again, because we're keeping the price tag high and looking at the Joola Scorpeus. It's very similar to the Perseus. In fact, the core is the same, the surface is the same, the weight is the same, and it even has the same thermoforming unibody molding process. But there is a major difference in paddle shape, and as we all know, that's extremely important in this sport, so in practice, they're really not all that similar at all. Instead of the elongated 16.5-inch profile of the Perseus, the Scorpeus is only 16 inches long, half an inch shorter, but also half an inch wider. So the Scorpeus is obviously more of a standard shaped paddle, but what really separates it from other standard length paddles is this 5.25-inch handle. It might be a little bit shorter than the one that's on the Perseus, but it's similar in length to a lot of other extended length paddles. It's the exact same length as the Invicta's handle and only 5mm shorter than the one on the Vatic Pro V7. That means that yes, it's a shorter paddle, but the handle itself isn't that short, and the paddle face is quite short, which you'll notice becomes an important theme as we go on. Now please remember that, as usual, you can check out any paddle we mention here on our website, racketsandrunners.ca. I've also got a product page linked in the description so you can kind of directly go to it if that's easier for you. And as usual, please remember to drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and let me know down in the comment section what topic or paddle you'd like me to cover next. Lots of cool stuff coming your way though, so stay tuned. But back to the Scorpeus. Now, I spent most of my time with the Collin Johns 16mm, but I also hit quite a bit with Anna Bright's 14mm, and as you would expect, the Anna Bright being 14mm is better for power, spin, and it's quicker through the air, but the Collin Johns being a little bit thicker is just a little bit better for touch and control. Let's get into some more specific playability characteristics, but stick around till the end because that's when I'm going to talk about who this paddle might be best for. I've been doing a lot of thinking on that, and it's pretty interesting. The Scorpeus is the fastest paddle I've ever extensively used. It's as simple as that, and it's really not even that close. Now, do take that with a small pinch of salt because I usually play with extended paddles, but it's faster than the Vatic Pro Flashes, faster than the Carbon 2s, and faster than any Selkirk paddle that isn't called the Epic Vanguard Power Air. Why is this one so fast though? Well, for one, it's short. It has a long handle and a super short paddle face. The short overall length means that it's a small lever, so it's going to be quicker than anything that's longer than this, and that's logical enough. Where it really shines compared to other shorter paddles though, is because it has so much handle and so little paddle face, it has less aerodynamic drag than something like the Epic or the S2. Those paddles are maneuverable for sure, but they don't have the same whippy feel of paddles with longer handles, because the draggy part of the paddle face comes down so low. It really is crazy just how maneuverable the Scorpeus is. When I first grabbed it in store, I was kind of waving it like this and I thought, wow, this is really cool. And then sure enough, as soon as I got onto the court, I've never felt an ability to instantly react to random on-court situations as well as this, especially at the net. It just requires a small tweak of the wrist and this thing will do exactly what you tell it to. I even added about 8 inches of lead tape to the edge guard here at 12 o'clock and it's still absolutely rapid and extremely maneuverable. One thing I've always felt with shorter paddles is that they just don't have the same spin potential as extended paddles because they simply don't have the same amount of purchase on the ball to add spin. To a certain extent, that's true with the Scorpeus. You can't really just deny science. So if I was hitting the exact same shot with the Scorpeus as I was with the Perseus, it would probably be less spin friendly. But because this shape is so rapid and so whippy, it's almost as if it's begging you to use more wrist snap for spin production. Once I started really cranking up that windshield wiper technique, especially on my forehand, I was feeling the ball shoot off with even more spin than I was on the Perseus. Like I said, the core and top sheet are the same on the Perseus and the Scorpeus. The only other two factors in spin production are mass behind the ball and the rate at which you accelerate the paddle face. The Perseus may have more mass, but the Scorpeus has more of that potential to be accelerated quickly. So especially after I added that lead tape, I have to say I think spin was a little bit higher on the Scorpeus, which I never thought I was going to say about a standard length paddle. So I know I just said that the core and top sheet are the same between the Perseus and the Scorpeus, so you would expect the feel to be very similar if not totally identical, but there definitely was a noticeable difference to me. The Scorpeus is quite a bit more crisp and almost a little bit more harsh feeling than the Perseus. To put it simply, it just feels more thermoformed. In the Perseus review and the comparison I did to the V7 and Carbon Powers, I said it was noticeably softer feeling than those, but I actually think the Scorpeus is much closer than the Perseus was. I don't know if Joola might just not be telling us the full truth of what's going on actually inside this paddle, but I find that unlikely, and I think it has more to do with this unique shape. With a paddle face this short, the sweet spot is also going to feel shorter and therefore harsher, at least vertically. Yes, the sweet spot is also going to be a little bit wider, but overall it is a smaller sweet spot, and I think that's why it has such a crisp response. Also keep in mind that having an overall shorter length like this and a smaller sweet spot is also going to mean that the Scorpeus is not as stable as the Perseus, but I was expecting that. Less real estate in the head and a shorter length means that it just won't be as solid on contact, but because you can swing it so fast, that won't really become too much of an issue, and you can always add a bit of lead tape to make it even more stable.
What a touch, eh?
I want to make it clear that that crisp feel that I'm talking about doesn't necessarily mean powerful. The Scorpeus isn't a powerful paddle per se, but I definitely think it is on the higher end of the power spectrum compared to other paddles that are this length. That crisp sensation does make it more instantly reactive than some other softer feeling 16mm thick paddles, but it definitely isn't as powerful as something like a Carbon Power or a Vatic Pro Flash. There's not much more to say about the power. It's good, but it's not over the top, and you certainly won't struggle in controlling it. As I've mentioned many times now, you can control a paddle's power with spin or softer traditional control. Because spin is so good on the Scorpeus, you can definitely control it that way, but it's also very good in the soft game. Okay, the paddle isn't necessarily plush, so it's not going to be a dinking or reset cheat code like the Vanguard 2.0s, but because it's so easy to maneuver, you've got plenty of control over how the ball launches when it leaves the paddle face. If you do want to add a bit more zing to your shots, flick that wrist a little harder, but otherwise keep it nice and locked, and the paddle will be super easy to guide through the soft game. Obviously the 16mm is more plush than the 14, but as usual with this sport, it is a give and take, and you will be sacrificing a bit of power and spin. I am still of the opinion though that 16mm is kind of the perfect thickness for thermoform paddles. That 2 extra millimeters of thickness really does help kind of control the very launchy tendencies. This is the million-dollar question. Who exactly is the Scorpeus made for, and how did I, a guy that mainly plays singles, get along with it? To be honest, I did have a pretty big period of adaptation, and I still can't say I'm as big of a fan as I am of other extended length paddles. I just am not that used to a shorter paddle's feel, stability, and especially that very different swing pattern. That being said, when I did get used to the Scorpeus, and especially when I was playing doubles, it's a totally addictive paddle. That otherworldly hand speed is really something I never thought I was going to appreciate as much as I did, and honestly it was pretty difficult going back to an extended length paddle afterwards. The way it performed at the net honestly felt like I was cheating at times. My reactions were way quicker, I kind of touched on that already, but also my volleys were way more pickleball-y, which made for a huge improvement in my game, especially at the net. What I mean by pickleball-y is that I was hitting those flicky style roll volleys a lot more than my kind of traditional tennis punchy volleys. It's kind of a difficult sensation to describe, but I was digging out some volleys with the slightest tweaks of my wrist, and they were almost going perfectly where I was telling them to go. It's almost like the paddle is begging you to get a little bit fancy with your touch shots at the net. It's really cool. So I think if you are able to get used to this stability and swing pattern, especially from the baseline, you're absolutely going to love it. But I would still caution you, there's a reason most singles players are still playing with extended paddles. For you doubles players, no need to be worried whatsoever. It's so rare to hit full-on ground strokes in doubles anyways, and from everywhere else on the court, it absolutely excels. I can't lie, I really enjoyed playing with the Scorpeus, and it's definitely going to go into my bag as a sort of guilty pleasure paddle, I guess you could say. And while I wasn't comfortable enough on the most important singles shots to complete the switch, I have to say I had so much fun with it that I'm probably going to default to it when I'm not playing super serious pickleball anyway. Pickleball is always super serious though, so I'm never gonna use it. But anyways, that's it from us today. Thank you for watching, everybody. We got some really cool stuff coming down the pipeline. And remember that if you do want to demo the Perseus, you can come visit us in store, or you can go check it out online at racketsandrunners.ca.